folks out there following us on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and Snapchat, all these places where I've been putting up pictures from all over the country. Been a lot of fun, but there's been one man holding down the fort here to make sure things, that the trains are running on time and all that. We welcome Luke Jones back onto the program to discuss what did I miss? I mean, is like Donald Trump going to be president or something? Was there a Terps-Georgetown game on Tuesday night, Lucas?
Yeah, if you listen really carefully, you can hear Georgetown turning it over again in the final 2 minutes. That and a whistle, because God knows there were enough of them. I mean, just what an interesting, weird, bizarre, miraculous game for Maryland, an absolute choke for Georgetown. But let me just put this aside, because then we can move on and talk about the actual game itself. That was some of the most ridiculous officiating I've seen throughout the night. 56 fouls called. You know, you're settling in, getting ready to get back into the flow of college basketball season. You know, whether you're a big-time fan or a more casual Terps fan, watching it, Maryland, Georgetown, you know, competitive game, fun game.
This is one that gets your attention, though, right? I mean, on the Terps schedule early, they didn't have a lot of big games. This is one where you're like, it's a Tuesday night. I'm hanging out. There's nothing else on. You know, baseball's over. All right, I'll turn my love over to the Terps for a couple of hours. And, oh, hey, there's Melo Trimble. Look, his hair's grown a little bit. He looks kind of good, right?
Yeah. I mean, and all that, we'll talk about that, but 56 fouls called over the course, more than a foul per minute. It's just, and look, it's not a Maryland thing, even though Georgetown did shoot way more free throws than Maryland did. But, I think there were bad calls, ticky-tack calls both ways throughout the night. Mark Turgeon got teed up with about 10 minutes to go. That actually, he said after the game, he kind of regretted it. He felt it hurt his team. But, that aside, what a weird, miraculous finish for that basketball game. I mean, you think about games, and the ultimate one, if you're a Terps fan, you think of Jason Williams and Duke doing what they did at Cole Fieldhouse.
The night before the Ravens won the championship.
Exactly, right? Night before Super Bowl 35, they erased that deficit in the final minute.
I was at a hell of a party that night.
yeah, and you think back to that, Maryland turned the ball over, but they missed some free throws. It's funny. Normally you hear about this kind of a comeback over the final minute. I mean, Maryland trailed by 7 inside a minute to go. Kevin Huerter hits the 3 to make it a 4-point game. They trailed by 6 with 30 seconds to go. And normally it comes down to what? You would assume the opposition misses a bunch of free throws. Well, that wasn't the case. In this case, you had Georgetown turning the ball over twice and committing fouls before Maryland even put the ball in play, so it putting Maryland on the line with a chance to shrink the lead with no time coming off the clock. So just a weird game, but hey, give Melo Trimble, and more so than him, we know Melo can do what he was able to do on Tuesday night. We've seen him do that. It was just a reminder of what a healthy Melo Trimble can do getting to the basket, and we didn't see that a whole lot last year. He had the hamstring issue, back issues, just didn't have that same explosiveness going to the rim, but you have to be really excited by what you saw from the freshman guard, Anthony Cowan, 6 foot, Bowie, Maryland product. Looks like he's going to be, the heir apparent, but he's playing right now. But certainly he'll be the guy.
It's wild getting to know these guys, right? Like you put it on and you're like, I sort of recognize it because Dodd's out there and Trimble's out there, but like, where's Jake Layman? I mean, it's really, really weird. And from a sports fan's perspective, and I'm older than you. The Orioles will take the field on opening day, and, Adam Jones will be over there, and Hardy will be over there, and Wieters won't be anymore, but somebody else will be, and obviously Trumbo won't be now. And so, but, I mean, there'll be pieces of it you recognize. Same thing with the Ravens year to year. But college basketball, it's almost like, shipping a whole new crew this time. I mean, it's like nothing about this feels like last year's team other than the uniforms, right?
Well, and last year's team was about having hired guns. And,
sure.
They had that Rashid Suleiman.
Isn't that what college basketball is?
Yeah.
Last time I saw Suleiman, he was in blue.
Right, exactly. I mean, you had Diamond Stone, who was a great get from a recruiting standpoint, but you knew he was 99% likely to be one and done. So, you have that. You knew Jake Layman was graduating. You knew that Robert Carter was, a good possibility to go into the draft. So, you knew last year's team was going to be, that last, that one and done kind of a scene where you then have a lot of turnover. But with Anthony Cowan, I really like what I see from Justin Jackson, the 6'7", kind of that stretch forward that you kind of need to have in the college game these days.
He was sort of the player of the game, right? I mean, he was the guy that if you're looking at it saying who's going to be, a factor guy, there's a new name. They're all new names and new faces and new numbers, I guess, to us, right?
Yeah, I mean, Melo's still the guy. I mean, this is still Melo's team, but you have to be impressed with what you saw from him, especially when you consider how badly they struggled from outside three. Justin Jackson hit 3 of his 4 attempts from beyond the arc. So, a guy like him, such long arms, can give them some rebounding. Rebounded really well against American. Only had, I think it was 4 rebounds against Georgetown, but you like what he was able to give you. And then what do you say about Kevin Huerter, Mr. Basketball in the state of New York? Freshman, didn't do a whole lot, hit the early 3 and then was really quiet. He had some foul trouble, but he sticks the 3 with just under a minute to go to cut the lead from 7-4. At that point, it looked like Maryland was just about dead, but that was the defibrillator right there, right? It kind of gave them a pulse again when he hits that shot.
I never felt like they were going to win, right? I mean, at what point in the game did you really feel like they were going to win the game?
The final 10 seconds when they fouled Melo Trimble. When they fouled
and I
him,
thought he got hurt too. I mean, it took Packer a little while to catch on, but he went down pretty hard.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But this was, and to finish my point on Huerter, he makes the big block at the very last at the buzzer. Just incredible to see what they were able to do. But this is a young team, and this goes back to the point you were just making. At this point in the season, when you have a team that has a lot of turnover, you have some freshmen who are clearly going to play some major minutes. You have a transfer like L.G. Gill who is going to figure into what they're doing pretty heavily. You have guys like Jared Nickens who you're hoping can play a more meaningful role. Nickens did not shoot the ball well whatsoever on Tuesday night, kind of a continuation of what we saw last year. But, everyone's role changes, and you have new guys coming in. Melo Trimble is the one constant there, and DeMonte Dodd's probably going to play a very similar role to what he has. He's not going to do much offensively, but at 6 blocks, he's going to play play good defense for you for the most part and help protect the paint. But everyone else is an unknown. And, they played Friday night against American. I'm guessing you didn't get a chance to see that. I didn't watch the entire thing. I watched a good portion of it, though. And, they kind of just went through the motions. And, even for a coach, and Mark Turgeon talked about this after the American game and talked about it going into the Georgetown game, you're trying to figure out what your rotation is going to be. Heck, when you have a team with this many new pieces, you're trying to figure out what your starting lineup's going to be.
Well, you don't know what these guys are going to do. I mean, who's going to block a shot in the last second the way Huerter did? Who's going to hit a free throw when you need them to? You don't know anything about these kids. I mean, and as fans, I think we know even less, and it really is – it's almost like I wish there was some preseason, right? We pee on the preseason, but at least we know what Eric Weddle looks like in a uniform, right? At least we know what number he is. That was sort of the awakening for me is who are these guys? Which one is which guy, right?
Yeah, and you do have the preseason with most of the non-conference schedule. I mean, there'll be more Americans. They'll play no disrespect to Pat Scaria and the Tigers, but they'll play Towson on Sunday. I mean, they have plenty of those types of games to kind of feel your way out. In most cases, unless you're not nearly as good as you think, you're not going to lose those types of games. You might have some uneven performances. Certainly, Maryland's opener against American, they only won by 6. But you get a chance to figure that out. But when you play a team like Georgetown, who, let's face it, I mean, the Hoyas aren't a top 5 team, and clearly they showed that in the final couple minutes on Tuesday night. But, you get some real competition, and that's where this is one of those gut check, and not just gut check, but, you find out what's between the ears, and you find out what these guys have in the chest, what kind of heart they have in playing in these kind of big games. And, if that's the litmus test, to be really encouraged by what you saw from Anthony Cowan and Kevin Huerter and Justin Jackson. I mean, these are freshmen playing their second collegiate game, and they all made meaningful contributions. So that bodes well for Maryland going forward. I think this team is going to have its struggles. I think you saw that big time with the offense. They didn't make open looks, but there were large stretches of time where the half-court offense really bogged down, and we've seen that quite a bit out of Mark Turgeon teams, regardless of who's been on the floor. So, you wonder how much of that is coaching, but these are young guys, and you got to try to figure things out. They'll go through those stretches. They'll probably have a couple losses, probably even early in Big Ten play where you say, that's a game they probably should have won. But, when you have a young team like this, you're encouraged by the prospects of getting better as the season goes on. And there's plenty to like, plenty to be concerned about, and plenty to say, hey, that has to get a lot better. But there was a lot to like, and no matter how crazy it was and how much of it was what Maryland did and what Georgetown didn't do in the final minute, you still have to tip your cap to the Terps, and that's just an enormous win for a really young basketball team.
Yeah, if you didn't catch it at all, Melo leads the way, 22 points, 7 of 13 field goals, and free throws 7 of 9. And, of course, at 87% with the game on the line over the course of his career, he's the guy you want doing that for you. Terps back after it. The schedule is interesting. St. Mary's on Thursday, Towson on Sunday, Stony Brook, Richmond, then Pittsburgh and Oklahoma State at the end. But, they could be in a position here if things go well, especially after beating Georgetown, which was one of those games maybe a little bit more in question, where they're going to be 8-1, 9-1, 9-2, or whatever by the time they start seeing Illinois right after Christmas.
Yeah, and they better be, because,
Sure.
You look at this non-conference schedule, it's not overwhelming. You don't see, they're not playing a top 5 kind of team at this point. So, it was nice to get, that's why it was so important to get the win.
Well, a lot of these teams go out to Hawaii and they play 3 meaningful games before anybody gets going. And, you got Kansas and the Michigan States and all them beating up on each other. And, those games are on TV every night. I don't know whether it's better for Maryland to be in a lot of them or none of them. And I remember the North Carolina game with you last year and watching that, as well as the big Georgetown game last year. We watched that at Buffalo Wild Wings up in Bel Air, and we thought there'd be more mojo for it in general. But something has to get your attention. Clearly the game itself was not an attention grabber. That arena looked like a skipjacks game, Luke. It was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, and part of it is a 6:30 start in D.C.
Fair enough.
That's going to be part of it, no doubt. But it's strange. It is. First of all, it's mid-November. You have a lot of people that aren't, and we know what Baltimore and D.C.
Look, I was at the Capitol Center for that famous Friday Joe Smith game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Black
no
Friday.
doubt.
I was at that game. It was packed. It was a big deal. They hadn't played in forever. And the memories of Sleepy Floyd and all that stuff, and John Thompson, and how much disdain there was between the programs. I guess all of that sort of mellowed, but you would think somebody would get on, on the subway and go to the game. I found it to be a little hollow in that way. And it should be worrisome for basketball in the area that the two teams that have dominated basketball for 50 years and had such bad blood for so long that, they can't sell a few more tickets. And I don't know what the tickets cost or whatever, and I guess it's not $10 to sit in the upper deck. I don't know, but I just know it looked really empty, for me.
Yeah, it did. Again, I didn't get to see a full shot of it, how it looked as the game went on. It was really empty early on, but Maryland's attendance was way up last year. They drew exceptionally well. Clearly, a team that had high expectations. It'd be interesting to see how they draw this year. But getting back to the product on the floor. It's going to be interesting to see what Mark Turgeon does with this group. You clearly have Melo Trimble. You have the franchise right there, but you have some other young guys who have looked really good early on. But you got to see how it plays out. But the Maryland Georgetown thing, they've only played a handful of times in my lifetime. It had been so long. They met up in the NCAA tournament years ago. But as far as them playing local games, it had been since '93 as far as them playing here in this area until the last 2 years. So, I think you'd like to see a way that these teams, even if they don't play every year, that they play semi-regularly. There's no reason why that can't happen. It's something that you'd like to see egos be brushed aside and say, this would be good for the area, and it would be. It was an electric atmosphere in College Park last year when the Hoyas came to Xfinity Center.
You had fun that night, didn't you?
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, and this one, regardless of what the crowd might have looked like, they were treated to another really entertaining game between two teams that should be geographic rivals. Meaning they'd be rivals if they played more often. So, it's something you'd like to see. Maryland in general needs to make sure they're scheduling some, at least a couple high quality non-conference opponents. This year, whatever. We'll see how it plays out, and certainly they'll be playing plenty of good schools in the Big Ten. I mean, right now you have Indiana in the top 10, you have Wisconsin in the top 10, Michigan State right on the cusp, Purdue's in the top 15. So plenty of tough competition in the Big Ten. So it's not a case where Maryland won't have the opportunity to build an NCAA tournament resume, but you'd like to see them make sure they have some meaningful games lined up in the non-conference schedule. And Georgetown it seems to make too much sense not to not do it.
It would be fun every November to get together. Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, it's something you just like to see.
I thought Maryland should play Navy all the time. I mean, I thought that, after the David Robinson era, when those teams were very good, and as well in football, right? I mean, and we see what Navy's done this year to make it a lot more interesting than the Terps have been the last couple of weeks in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no question about it. So, it's...
rivalries begin at home.
Oh, no doubt. But, for Maryland, as far as just interest in general, try to build on, as crazy as it sounds, because you can't build because it's a different team, but, try to build on the mentality that making it to the Sweet 16, shouldn't just be the ceiling. That should be something you're doing fairly regularly. Not every year. I mean, it's tough to do that every year, and that gives you that much more appreciation for the long stretch that Gary Williams had here in this area of doing what he did in College Park without crossing the line in terms of recruiting practices. A guy who wasn't willing to do that kind of stuff. But for Mark Turgeon, I mean, for him to finally make a Sweet 16 this past spring was good, but that can't just be the absolute ceiling. That can't be, the highest level that you aspire to. That needs to become more of a semi-regular expectation with a chance to, every so often have a chance to make it to a Final Four. And, whether it happens again under his tenure, I mean, we'll see. But, you're hoping that what they were able to do last year with a pretty unique group, even if that group still felt like they left you wanting more. I think most Terps fans would feel that way, but it was still a Sweet 16 trip, and you're hoping that this year at least get back to the NCAA tournament and try to at least win a game, make some noise, and continue to build. They've certainly brought in talented players. Mark Turgeon has not lacked talented players. The question is, can he bring it all together and make those players reach their full potential and play as a team that's capable of getting to a Final Four? I think it'd be unfair to expect out of this group this year, but certainly nice to see them win against Georgetown, and that's a big win for those freshmen to kind of gain some confidence and realize, hey, I can play at this level against good competition, and they certainly came through on Tuesday.
Staying mellow, as always, Terps win 76-75 over the Georgetown Hoyas. They're 2-0. They get back after it on Thursday night. Luke at WNST.net is the way to find him. He's also Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. Last thing, I know we've talked a lot of football here this week. We talked some basketball now. I will talk some hockey with Ed Frankovic before it's all over with. Any thoughts on the Orioles and where they are in this mix of maybe the mistakes they made last year? I'm not saying Wieters was a mistake, but this is a new system. It's something everybody's feeling out, and certainly Mark Trumbo feels like he's going to go out and get a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really surprising to this point. I mean, I was, how I felt about the giving Wieters the qualifying offer last year. I mean, it was a one-year deal. In the end, they always say, there's no such thing as a bad one-year contract. I think when you looked at the market as it stands for catching right now, they probably could have given him a qualifying offer, and he probably would have turned it down. But at the same time, a lot of the issues that you and I have discussed when it comes to him, other teams are aware of. And, I still don't think he's going to get the kind of deal that Russell Martin got a couple years ago or Brian McCann got a couple years ago. what was it, the 5-year, $80 million range.
I can't imagine that happening,
I
but
don't
it's
think-
baseball, bro. I mean, weird stuff happens, but not as much as it used to, right? I mean, we used to always argue against it, and I remember getting into a long debate last offseason about, the money and the craziness of it, that at some point the madness stops. For some guys it does. For DHs it does, right? I mean, but it feels like it never stops for starting pitching.
Yeah, well, and the reality is, though, you look at this starting pitching market, Jeremy Hellickson ends up taking the qualifying offer with Philadelphia. There's just not much out there. I mean, I think you're going to see, and we've already heard the scuttlebutt. I mean, Tuesday, there were rumors about Atlanta being interested in just about any ace pitcher who might be on the trading block, even if, aces that might not even be, teams might not even be interested in dealing. Atlanta was... there was a report out there about them being
maybe
interested.
CC Sabathia is available.
Yeah,
huh?
right. I mean, you'll always have guys like that out there, but Jeremy Hellickson, when you're talking about him accepting a qualifying offer and he would have been one of the better starting pitchers out on the market, it just shows you how little is going to really be out there. So, getting back to the Orioles, with Wieters, it'll be interesting. I mean, he has no draft pick attached to him. In the case of Trumbo, most projections I've seen probably has him getting Nelson Cruz-like money, which, if you remember, was 4 years, $57 million. I think that would be something that would be reasonable for him. I mean, he's a guy's a DH. He's not going to be a guy that teams are going to be really excited about signing and sticking in the outfield. I mean, he lost a lot of his value playing defense for the Orioles, and one reason they want to upgrade their outfield defense. For the right price, they'd like to bring him back as their full-time DH, but is that right price going to be something that's going to be what they're looking to spend? I'm guessing not. But that draft pick being attached, we've seen that mess with guys' value. You saw what happened with Dexter Fowler last year. You saw what happened with Ian Desmond last year. So. You never.
They're always the
know.
last guy on the shelf at the grocery store, it seems like, right?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I think it's, as much as we talk about the players, I mean, I think so many agents have been in a really strange position. And, there's been a lot of talk about the CBA that probably you're going to see the qualifying offer go, be eliminated, if not at least change drastically, because I think it does hurt some of those, the elite talents. It doesn't matter for them. They're going to get their big contract. A few years ago, Robinson Cano was a perfect example. You'll give up a draft pick and not even think twice about a guy like that. But guys like Dexter Fowler a year ago, like Giovanni Gallardo, who the Orioles did give a draft pick up to sign, and now I'm sure there's a ton of buyer's remorse there.
Felt like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, but a lot of people said it wasn't. But that's also what happens when you don't address your starting pitching until the end of the spring. But those types of players, those guys that clearly aren't marquee free agents, they're second and in some cases third-tier free agent types. Those are the guys that have really been harmed by this system. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened with Wieters if the Orioles had given him a qualifying offer. One, would he have taken it? Two, if he had rejected it, what would his market have been then? I think he would have been a really interesting case. But, with Trumbo, I'm guessing some team out there is going to be willing to give him, the kind of money that makes it justified for him to turn down the $17.2 million offer. And, he'll become some team's full-time DH, or, if it's a National League team, maybe they make him a first baseman where, over the course of his career, he's played average defense at first base at least. So it'll be interesting. I don't think the door is closed there, but I think it's pretty much closed there. I mean, again, unless that market ends up being a lot cooler than reports and the speculation is indicated, I'm guessing I almost called him Mark Trestman. Mark Trumbo will find a job elsewhere.
Still blaming Trestman for stuff, aren't you?
I know, right? But it's funny because I expect what the reaction is going to be. It's probably going to be harsh, probably going to be a lot of panic. But I'll remind everyone was complaining about how this offense was so dependent on the home run. And that's kind of been the annual complaint, right? We've talked about that for 3 or 4 years now. And I'm not saying I have the perfect solution on how to go about doing it, but there are other ways to make this offense even better that doesn't include re-signing Mark Trumbo. Now, you got to be creative. You got to find the right guys. You got to find good value. You got to find pieces that fit. You need to find an outfielder. If it's not him, you need to find a right fielder that is going to be good enough offensively. But
I hear
also,
Dexter Fowler's going to enter the market.
Dexter Fowler on paper would be the perfect guy to target, but I'm guessing that ship has sailed based on how it played out last year with both sides. But
money soothes feelings.
Yeah, but they need to upgrade the defense. The outfield defense cost their pitching dearly last year. I mean, it just did, and that's something that it's hard to quantify in a lot of cases. That's why baseball nerds like me like stats like wins above replacement, because it takes into account base running and defense in terms of valuing a player. So those are things that they need to look at. Dan Duquette's already said it, and we kind of talked about this at the end of last season. Barring something unforeseen, I'm not expecting any major changes to this rotation. And it's the reality is, do you want to go out there and find the next Giovanni Gallardo to add to the mix, and it's another bad contract that you're lamenting? That ace pitcher is not going to be out there. In terms of as a free agent. Now, you might be able to do it via trade, but the Orioles don't have pieces to trade. We've been over that, so I expect the rotation to be pretty much unchanged. The big question will be, can you upgrade your outfield? Can you replace Mark Trumbo? I think in the case of replacing Matt Wieters, I think you look short term here. I think you look for someone like maybe a Jason Castro, for example, a guy has a little bit of pop, solid defensively. You could kind of pair him with Caleb Joseph as a placeholder, and you hope Chance Cisco could be ready. Some people think he could be ready next year. If not next year, the year after that. So, I think we've always had this idea of Matt Wieters that's always been better than the actual player himself, and I know you've talked about that quite a bit over the years. I don't think losing Wieters is a death knell for this team whatsoever. I just don't. I haven't valued him as much as a lot of people have, and maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they fall off a cliff, but I also remember they won 96 games 2 years ago with Wieters missing most of the season. So I think they'll be okay in that front, but it's just a matter of how do you get better? You hope Jonathan Scope continues to get better. I think Manny Machado can still get better in some ways, although it's a lot to ask him to get much better than what he already is. Dylan Bundy, is he going to take a step forward now and be a starting pitcher moving forward? Certainly encouraging things. That was one of the best stories of 2016 in terms of the Orioles' long-term view. Kevin Gausman, can he build on what he did in the second half? So, you're always looking for that improvement from within with your young players. But then on the flip side, Adam Jones will be another year older, and J.J. Hardy will be another year older. So, you always have those young guys that you're hoping to get more out of, but understanding that Father Time is catching up with those players on the wrong side of 30. So, they're going to be paying their payroll as it stands right now, just with some of the raises they're going to be giving to guys like Manny Machado and Zach Britton and Chris Tillman in arbitration. It's going to be hovering around $150 million. So, are they going to be adding, a percentage comparable to what they did from going from 2015 to last year? Who knows? I'm guessing probably not. So, they might have to. Dan Duquette might have to get creative if they're not going to be willing to spend markedly more money than they did a year ago. And, there's the whole matter of the clock continuing to tick with Manny Machado as his free agency gets closer and closer at the end of 2018. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason. I don't know if we're going to see dramatic moves made, but I'm interested to see if they can make those moves, those moves in the margin, so to speak, to get better. But to me, their biggest priority needs to be to improve that outfield defense, because that really hurt their pitching. And we know this is a pitching staff that can't afford to have defense hurting it on top of not being all that strong in the rotation.
Terry Francona won the Manager of the Year over the weekend, if you missed that as well. I find it fascinating that Buck could have the biggest gaffe of the year and still, be very well thought of in that way. But it would have been funny if the Manager of the Year had left Zach Britton on the end of the bench, though.
Oh,
right?
I was glad that he didn't win it. I mean, for his sake. I mean, look, and I've written this, I'll continue to say this. You can think that Buck Showalter is both a great manager and really screwed up at the wrong time. those aren't mutually exclusive beliefs. And I happen to hold both of those beliefs. I'll never defend what he did by not using Zach Britton, but I still think he's a damn good manager. And he even acknowledged Tuesday night during the awards show that he regretted it. And maybe that's lip service. Maybe deep down he's too stubborn to admit that he really messed up. But he admitted it publicly. You hope he learned from it either way. But he's been a guy who's managed his bullpen so well. That's one of the big reasons why this team has been so good over the last 5 years after being so terrible for so long. So, I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He screwed up, there's no doubt. And unfortunately, the way it's looking, and we'll see how the next couple years play out and how much longer he's their manager and wants to do it. But it looks like that could be something that could, unfortunately, be a major black mark and maybe even define his final legacy in Baltimore, unfortunately. But, we'll see what the future holds, but I'd still want him managing my team over just about any other manager in baseball. Maybe a couple others would be in the conversation, but I'm willing to not forget, but I think he's done more than enough to warrant some forgiveness in this town based on what he's done the last 5 years.
You can find Luke at Baltimore Luke on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. We'll continue on with baseball, with Terps, with Ravens, with Caps. And getting you ready for a weekend in Dallas. I'm heading down there myself. We'll be out on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net as well. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault's there for you 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download. You can listen to anything from anywhere, anytime that you want. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That is powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in great shape there for the holidays, working off all that pumpkin spice nonsense. And I haven't even started in on the eggnog yet. I gotta get to the grocery store. I get 6 weeks of eggnog in me, and damn it, I'm going to do it. Last but never least, breaking news does happen first on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis is here every Thursday. He'll get you ready for Thursday Night Football. We're getting you ready for Sunday with the Cowboys and the Ravens. I'm heading down to Dallas. We'll see how 48 hours in Texas goes this weekend against the 8-1 Cowboys. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.